Hello, and a very warm welcome to another edition of Passions. And in this episode, I'm absolutely delighted to be welcoming Howard Samuels to the show. So without further ado, Howard, a very warm welcome to Passions. Tell us
Thank you.
who you are and what your passion is.
My name is Howard Samuels, and I guess my passions are film, musical theatre, cooking, and a little bit of, believe it or not, static trapeze.
Well, that's a very interesting range of things. I guess we'll start off with the art. It's very arty. That's the first thing that's obvious.
Yep.
So, first thing I would ask you is how did you get into it? You know, was it a school thing? Were you like 4 and performing in the front
No,
room?
do you know what it was?
How did it come about?
My mum took me to see Seven Brides for Seven Brothers at a local cinema, and it was continuous performances. So it literally, as the film finished, the next showing came straight away. And apparently I was obsessed with the film. I was obsessed with staying and watching the next one, and I couldn't believe it that I was being dragged out because the film had begun again. And at that time in the papers, there was a lot of reports about women who were beating their children. And we were at the bus stop, and I was screaming and screaming and screaming. And this woman said to my mother, "I've read about people like you, and I'm going to watch you.
No.
Don't you dare touch that little boy."
Oh,
and this was all because of Seven Brides for Seven Brothers. So I think that I owe it all to that film. And the
that's
Ionic and
incredible.
golden screen.
So
yeah.
a lot of people would watch a movie when they were younger and go, I enjoyed that, and that was kind of the end of it. So how did you then get into it and start making a career out of it?
Well, then I guess it was always something that I shined at. You know, I was always putting shows on in the garden after school. I was always doing things like that, and I guess it was kind of a no-brainer. It was my talk about passion. It was obviously the only thing that rocked my boat. And I was in all the school plays, and I was in everything like that, and I was singing, and it was obviously, for me, there was no other journey other than I went to drama school, and that's how it all began, really, and continued.
Yeah. So tell us some of the things that you've done then in terms of, because obviously I know your description is, you know, director and writer and musical theatre and acting. What do you actually focus your time on now?
I do my own cabaret, my own shows, which are kind of a mixture of stand-up meets cabaret, really. So it's all comedy based, and still theatre, mainly theatre. You know, every so often something crops up. You know, I've just done a short film called Waving, which has won, really, I'm really proud of. It's won lots and lots of awards on the circuit, which has been great to be part of. I've just finished doing the Tony Blair, the rock opera, written by Harry Hill and Steve Brown, which was an extraordinary piece of musical theatre. It's the best thing I've done in ages. I loved it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And you're obviously based in London, so I guess this pretty much the UK centre. Are you based in London?
I'm based in London, yeah. I'm London born and bred. So the Tony Blair show was done originally at the Park Theatre in Finsbury Park. And then the following year, it went out on a big tour of the UK involving the Edinburgh Festival as well. So I feel that it was like part of my life for 2 years. And it was hilarious. It was a real joy to be in something that was as funny as that was, you know, to hear an audience.
And was Harry Hill heavily involved in the production side? He wasn't just the writer and then left it to everybody else.
When we did it at the Park Theatre, he was. They were very involved because it was the first time it was being mounted as a full production. And because I was playing Peter Mandelson, who they envisaged as a mixture between the MC from Cabaret and Frankenfurter. That's gives you a clue of where this show was kind of headed. And I ended up, I did a lot of the kind of Harry Hill stuff during the show. So, you know, I suddenly made a balloon dog in the middle in the middle of the show. I had this whole bit of business with a carrot and a stick and a slapstick. It was very funny, very mad. And Harry was around a lot of the time, as was Steve, who wrote the music. And it was a fantastic time.
So do you kind of take it a little bit for granted now that you're in this showbiz world? Now you've been in this for a while, and these people that,
do you know what? I don't think
household names just appear here, there, and everywhere. Do you just take that for granted, or are you still a bit, oh, that's such?
I think you never get over. I don't. I think it's always, you can't take it for granted. It's always extraordinary when you see people like that, and you end up, oh, look at me, I'm working like, yeah. I mean, you know, I was talking about Seven Brides and Seven Brothers. What was really bizarre is I ended up doing this. There was one night at the London Palladium, which was Fred Astaire's daughter, called Ava, who put on a whole evening of like her tribute to her father. And they literally had flown in all of these big Hollywood stars for one night to tell their stories. And I ended up walking on Jane Powell, who was the lead in Seven Brides and Seven Brothers. And I actually said to her, I said, you do realize that you're responsible for the reason that I've done this whole thing. It's like extraordinary to meet you. And it was like, I can't believe of all people, I walked her onto the stage. She was so lovely, but how mad is life, you know?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Extraordinary.
So we're obviously recording this now in September October, actually, 2024. Mm-hmm. I'd like to just ask you a very wide question, but are you over COVID now? Have people returned en masse now to the theatres? And
yes.
How did you handle it when it was bad?
Well, it was terrible. I mean, I was on tour with The Sound of Music, and literally we got an email the night before turning up to the next venue saying it's finished, tour's cancelled, everything's done. And at that point, no one had any idea of how long it was going on for or what. I mean, it was truly terrible times. I mean, I have to say, I think the government treated the arts appallingly for that whole time. We were really shafted and really conveniently fell between a lot of the gaps, so you couldn't really claim anything. It was extremely difficult if you were a performer, and I think it was insulting to when Rishi Sunak was saying, you know, well, just let them retrain or get something else. It was a disgraceful way of treating people in the arts who. So anyway, I've said my piece. It was a disgraceful time, and because of the way that it initially began, the way it was worded was that we're not. Then they didn't make it official, but they were saying we're seriously recommending people not to go to theatre. So therefore, nobody got any compensation because it wasn't made law. It was easy to just go, sorry, we're stopping this. So it was terrible, and it was a hard time because, you know, all of the those industries, you know, restaurateurs, restaurants, pubs, bars, theatre, all of those things were suffered the most, you know. It was a dreadful time. So yes, what has happened now is that everything's back to normal, or it feels that way very much so. It even to the point where I think COVID is like safely. It's around, but it's not as frightening as it was, not as daunting as it was, not as scary as it was, you know.
Almost to the point where when you look back on it, it's almost like you felt that you almost dreamed it.
No, absolutely. It's like, was that really the case? When you're going, where you'd meet outside for a quick 5 minutes and not push it any further than that because you're too scared. It was extraordinary time.
Absolutely crazy. Time. So have you always had have you always had a lot of confidence and self-belief? I mean, when you go up
Do you-
there and you perform, do you kind of just, is it a bit like water off a duck's back, or do
I
you
think it's
need a
never.
couple of trips to the loo?
No, do you know what? Everyone's different. I think everybody is different. I kind of think with me, I'm the anticipation is the worst thing. So if I'm doing like my own gig or a camp, it's like the build up to it is. I'm a great pacer. I like to pace a lot, and I question everything, and I re-question everything, and whoever's playing with me, I'm going, do you think we should be doing that song? Do you think we should be doing this? Maybe we should do something else. But once I walk on to that stage, when I walk out, put that first foot down, it's like I'm the most confident person in the world. It's like a split personality. It's like bizarre. But yeah, that's my own thing, is that I, up until the moment I walk on stage, you think I no way on earth would I be able to do that. As soon as I walk out there, it is water off a duck's back. It's
And were
second
you confident that you would make a career out of this? I mean, you obviously had a passion for it. Clearly, you
yeah,
identify that you had a passion for it. Were
yes,
you very confident that this is what I'm going to make a living out of?
yes.
Or was there an element of it, well, I might have to do this on the side? How did that
No, it was
develop?
always there was never a question. Truthfully, there was never any question of that. This is not. This is going to be just for a part-time thing or something like that. I was always going to do that and figure out a way to make it work, because you have to be realistic, and not a lot of, it's a terrible profession. If I would have got, I always think I could have gone to a brain surgery class, but no, I didn't go. I went the other way. Why did I do that? That's the way it goes, sliding doors, But I was always going to do this, and the highs are amazing. The best times are fantastic. When I think of, I did Rocky Horror a lot, played Frankenfurter 4 times in 4 different productions, and that was one of my highlights of doing this whole thing, because I think I was like one chromosome away from being a raw anorak fan of the Rocky Horror show. I saw it when in the King's Road. I absolutely became obsessed with it. Every time it was Halloween, I'd dress up as Frankenfurter, and then cut to my friends coming to see me in a £500,000 production of the Rocky Horror Show, coming down from the wings, from the roof of the theatre on a crescent moon. They went, "This has gone too far. This has gone too far. Stop now. What's going on?" And first time I did it was in Budapest, to a sports stadium with 4,500 people, and I
That's
saw.
just wonderful.
I sang "I'm Going Home," and I saw these flickers round the stadium, and I'm thinking, what is that? And of course, in those days, people were lighting their lighters so they could sway to the song, and that is an image that I'll never ever forget. And I thought, if I never see it again, I saw 4,500 people light their lighters to me singing "I'm Going Home," and what a buzz that was.
I guess that's a really good example, actually, of earning a living from a career from a career that's linked to your passion.
Yeah.
Because I guess you're so committed to it that you'll. Well, let me ask you: is it a case of doing what it takes? I mean, there's a lot of rejection.
Yeah.
There's a lot of competition.
Always. Yeah, it's really hard.
Almost.
Don't get
Yeah.
me, let me know. I'm not going to sugarcoat this at all. It is incredibly hard. It's not fair. As a profession, you have to deal with all of that, because actually talent is one of the least things that is required. If do you know what I mean? It's so much is, if you're in the right place at the right time, really, a lot of things, it's like talent is a bonus, but it's not a necessity in a weird sort of way. But you just have to accept that is the reality. That is the way. It's not like other professions where you go up the ladder and by just by a length of your service, of your tenure, you automatically will be moved on. It's always like a lot of the time you're as good as your last job, or you start from scratch each time you do a new job. It's very interesting. It's a funny old world, but that's the world it is. And
how
you
did you
either
deal?
it
How
eats
did
you up,
you?
it eats you up, or it doesn't.
Yeah,
You know,
no, I get you. How did you deal with that rejection in the early days? Did you
it's
did
very
you
it's
just
very
did it just
hard.
bounce off you, or?
No, it's very hard, and I think there are times when it can be really soul-destroying. And I think if it becomes too much for you, then you need to bail out. I think that by doing a lot of my own stuff, putting on my own things, you realize that, because if you sit on the other side of the scale, you realize that if you're casting something, a lot of the time it's not about, so you see people come and they audition, and practically all of them can do the job. It's not that they can't do the job. They're all really talented. They're all capable of doing it. There's always something else. It's about kind of cast, you want everyone to have their own sort of individual color, not blurring with someone else. So it's all about making the right cast out of who you've got. That's the hard pill to swallow. You never see it from the other side if you're the one who's auditioning. You always think, well, I'm perfect for it. Why? What do you mean? And it's interesting seeing it from the other side, and very helpful, I guess.
Yeah. So is it? Would you say then, to a point, is there an element of it there is a numbers game? The more you go for, the more ultimately you'll probably succeed.
It's like all of those things. Yes, ideally, it's interesting. You can never tell. I mean, that's the thing. I'd love to say that there's a surefire way, but sometimes you go into something and you go, do you know what? You come up there and go, do you know what? I'm so gonna get this. This is like, it's got my name all over it. I couldn't have done any better, and you never hear another word. And sometimes the ones that you come out and go, God, that was one of the worst experiences ever, and suddenly they're all over you like a rash. Going, when can you start? We've got to have you.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's very interesting. I find it extremely interesting, because I think in life in general, this is the same thing. I'm a business consultant by trade, and I'm talking to clients all the time about sales, for example. I do quite a bit of sales stuff, and that whole area. It's the same in that. It's persistence, and if you get the no, it doesn't mean a no. It just means not now, or there's other nuances in place.
I wish there was an answer that you could give that was like surefire and steadfast and would always be the way. But I think the whole thing is everything can turn on a sixpence. Everything is literally overnight. Something can change, and your whole life could completely change. It's happened to friends of mine. Completely. It's mind-boggling. It's
almost random,
like that.
In
it's
a
like
sense.
the Holy Grail. It's like the Holy Grail. We're all searching for that. We're all looking for it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And are there any shows that you've not yet done? I mean, that sounds a wide question, but are there any shows that you've not yet done that are on the bucket list?
There are a few, there are a few that I would love to have a crack at, but it's interesting. Time moves on, and suddenly the parts that you want to do, you're either you move into a different age bracket, and you're not this. They're not look. It depends, It really, but yeah, there's still a few shows out there that you go, do you know what? I'd love to have a go at that, or I'd love to do, another Neil Simon comedy. I did The Sunshine Boys Many Moons Back, which was directed by Maureen Lipman, which was an amazing experience. I'd love to do another Neil Simon, because that's my kind of sense of humor. I love that delivery. So yeah, I'd love to do something like that. I'd like to do another Sondheim. I did Company, which was an amazing musical too. I'd love to do another one of his musicals, because they're just so rich and joyous, and you can really, it's a perfect mix of everything. Yeah, so there's still stuff to do.
And then when you travel, and when you're traveling around, do you enjoy the traveling around the country and being away for weeks on
Less,
end or
no,
whatever, or
I
is
have
that
to
something you
admit,
struggle with?
yeah, I must admit, I feel a bit, because I've done, it's because things that you've done a lot of, I have done a fair amount of that. Never say never, but it's not something that I particularly feel like doing again for a while. I just did it with the Tony Blair show because I loved the show so much, and I wanted to keep doing that. You know, I wanted to see it through for as long as possible. But yeah, touring is hard. Touring is hard. I don't like being away from, you know, my family. So that's not something that I relish. But every so often you get something that comes along and you go, you know, I'm going to have to do it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, in a sense, that's what I suppose that's the point I was making, really, because I always think there's sacrifice, anything worth doing.
Yeah,
At some point there's sacrifice, isn't there? Is
yeah,
that something you've experienced over the years?
yeah. No, absolutely. It's you know, yeah. Sometimes you just have to, and no matter how hard that is, sometimes you do realize that, you know, yeah, you've given up quite a lot. I think that's what you realistically, that's what a lot of actors do. You make a lot of sacrifices to keep doing this, which is why it gets it's harder when things don't work out or you don't get treated properly. You think, you know what, I've given up a lot to do this.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And how does it work exactly? Do you have an agent, and does your
Yeah,
agent come to see
yeah,
you and say, "I've got this opportunity for you,
yeah,
Howard," or
yeah.
yeah?
You've got, yes, indeed, that's what they are representing you. They're looking for things for you to go up for, or to answer the calls if the call comes through for you. So yeah, that's it, really important. And I think it's really important finding the right agent for you as well, and because it's a two-way street, it's got to be, you've got to, I think it's a mutual respect for each other, and as long as they understand you and what you want and what you don't want to do, I think there's I think everyone should be allowed to say that they don't want to go up to something when they don't. You know, I think that it shouldn't be the case that, well, you've got to go up for every single thing. No, I think it gets to a point where you go, no, there's some things I don't want to do, some things I don't want to go away for, and other things that you do. Yeah, so it becomes, I think it needs to be a conversation.
Yeah. And do you prefer things that are challenging nowadays, or do you prefer things that are a little bit more straightforward?
No, I think a challenge is always exciting. A challenge is something that you know, to come to not be safe is exciting, because otherwise it feels like there are stuff that you think, well, I could do that with my hands tied behind me, blindfold. That's not exactly the best
Yeah.
reason to do something, unless of course they pay you a fortune, and then you go, yes, thank you very much, I'll do
And then
that.
it's a whole different
And then it's,
conversation.
of course it is. It's like
We
being,
all
yeah.
have our price, Howard. We all have our price.
I was saying this only the weekend. We are all hookers at the end of the day.
We are. We are. We
You
are.
know, especially in the entertainment business, it's like, how much you think? How okay? How would you like that? Where do you want me? What do you want me to say? How would you?
I think it's fantastic. Well, Howard, thanks very much for joining me today. I found that really
It's
interesting.
been
And
an absolute pleasure.
just to finish off, then,
Yeah.
this is a kind of a bit of a cliche question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. What would you say if you had to give one bit of advice for achieving success in your arena? What would you advise people?
Well, it's a good question. It's really, it's a difficult thing to say. I think the best advice would be to not take anything to heart. Believe in yourself, believe in your talent, believe in your worth, and don't let people diminish it, because only you are the only person who can keep yourself going.
Well, I think that's a fantastic bit of advice.
Yeah.
And a great place to finish. So, Howard, thanks very much indeed for joining me. I really, really enjoyed talking to you. And
too.
Hopefully, even though, as you can tell, I'm in Manchester, or you can semi-tell, I'm in Manchester. It'd be great to meet up with you at some point down in London.
Yeah, absolutely. It would be a pleasure.
Fabulous. Thanks very much for your time, Howard. All the very best. And thank you again for your time. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.